Good morning. Yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear Alex Jones's appeal, letting a $1.4 billion judgment against him stand. This isn't just about money, it's about the devastating impact of lies and the long, painful journey of families forced to endure harassment after unimaginable loss. The Sandy Hook family's fight has set a precedent. There are real consequences for using a public platform to inflict pain by distorting reality. Today, we'll explore how this case unfolded, why the courts held Jones accountable, and what it means for truth and responsibility in our society. On December 14, 2012, a gunman entered Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, killing 20 children and 6 educators. The tragedy shattered families and the nation, leaving a community in mourning. Parents faced the unimaginable, burying their children and trying to rebuild their lives. The world responded with compassion, but for the families, grief was only the beginning. They expected to mourn in peace, but soon, a new torment emerged, one not from violence, but from words. Their pain was about to be questioned and denied on a national stage. This new assault would come from conspiracy, not a weapon. In the aftermath, Alex Jones, host of InfoWars, began spreading a conspiracy theory that Sandy Hook was a staged event, a false flag to push gun control. He claimed grieving parents were crisis actors, and his platform relentlessly pushed these lies for years. Jones's broadcasts reached millions, fueling a movement that saw the families not as victims, but as frauds. The conspiracy spread rapidly online, dividing public perception and emboldening a vocal minority. For Jones, these lies were profitable, driving sales and boosting his media empire. He turned the family's tragedy into content, hiding behind free speech while profiting from their pain. The consequences would soon spill far beyond the internet. The Sandy Hook families became targets of relentless harassment, threats, and intimidation from Jones's followers. Strangers confronted them, accused them of faking their loss, and even desecrated graves. Some families moved repeatedly to escape the abuse. Others faced online attacks and stalking. Lenny Posner, father of Noah, fought to remove abusive content about his son from the internet. The emotional toll was immense. Families lived in fear, denied the right to grieve in peace. Evidence showed Jones often directed his audience's anger at specific families, fueling the harassment. The families weren't just mourning, they were fighting for their safety and the truth of their loss. The damage was real, and it demanded accountability. In 2018, after years of enduring harassment and public scrutiny, several families who lost loved ones in the Sandy Hook tragedy decided to take a stand. They filed defamation lawsuits against Alex Jones in Texas and in Connecticut, where many of the families lived and where the pain of Jones's words was felt most deeply. Their goal was clear: to prove that Jones's repeated claims about the shooting were not just protected speech or conspiracy theories, but deliberate, malicious lies that inflicted real, lasting harm on grieving families. For years, these families had faced threats, online abuse, and even strangers showing up at their homes, all fueled by the misinformation spread on Jones's platforms. The legal battle that followed centered on the concept of defamation, knowingly spreading false statements that damage reputations and destroy lives. Jones and his legal team tried to dismiss the cases, arguing that he was merely exercising his right to free speech and just asking questions. But the courts saw things differently. Jones repeatedly refused to comply with court orders, failing to turn over key documents and evidence, and even skipping depositions. This pattern of obstruction and defiance backfired dramatically. Judges in both Texas and Connecticut issued rare default judgments, finding Jones liable for defamation without the need for a full trial, simply because he refused to participate in the legal process as required. The only question left for the courts was how much Jones should pay in damages for the pain and suffering he had caused. The stage was set for a series of emotional trials, where, for the first time, the families would have the chance to tell their stories in court and seek accountability. For them, this fight was about more than money. It was about reclaiming their truth, restoring their dignity, and demanding justice in the face of relentless lies. With Alex Jones found liable for defamation, the focus shifted to the families who had suffered for years. In both Texas and Connecticut, juries listened intently as parents, siblings, and loved ones took the stand. They described in vivid detail the relentless threats, harassment, and emotional pain they endured as a result of Jones's false claims. The courtrooms were filled with raw emotion, as families recounted how their grief was compounded by strangers who believed the lies and targeted them online and in person. The testimony was often heartbreaking, painting a picture of lives upended by conspiracy theories and misinformation. Scarlett Lewis, the mother of Jesse, bravely faced Jones in court and told him directly, "My son existed." Her words echoed through the courtroom, a powerful reminder of the real human cost behind the headlines. Other parents shared similar stories, describing the pain of losing a child and then being forced to defend their memories against a tide of denial and cruelty. After days of emotional testimony, the juries delivered their verdicts. In Texas, the jury awarded nearly $50 million in compensatory damages to the families. In Connecticut, the jury went even further, awarding a staggering $965 million. These amounts reflected not just the financial losses, but the immense emotional suffering and trauma inflicted on the families. The Connecticut judge later added $474 million in punitive damages, sending a strong message that such malicious conduct would not be tolerated. Altogether, the total judgment against Jones soared to over $1.4 billion, a sum almost unimaginable, underscoring the gravity of his actions. In the moments after the verdicts were read, families wept and embraced, overwhelmed by a sense of justice finally being served. For many, the verdicts were not just about money, but about validation, the world acknowledging the pain they had endured and the truth of their loss. The penalties imposed on Jones were designed to punish his reckless and malicious behavior, and to serve as a warning to others who might consider spreading harmful lies. The court made it clear: there are real consequences for those who profit from misinformation at the expense of innocent people. This case quickly became one of the largest defamation awards in U.S. history, drawing national attention and sparking conversations about accountability in the media and online platforms. The legal system had delivered a clear and unmistakable message: lies that cause real harm will not go unpunished. The verdicts stood as a testament to the power of truth and the importance of standing up for those who have been wronged. But even with the judgments handed down, Alex Jones was not ready to accept defeat. The fight, it seemed, was far from over. Facing over $1.4 billion in judgments after a series of high-profile defamation trials, Alex Jones found himself at the center of a legal storm that captured national attention. The staggering sum reflected the gravity of the harm caused by his repeated false claims, and the courts had spoken with a clarity rarely seen in such cases. In a desperate attempt to shield his assets and delay the inevitable, Jones declared bankruptcy and launched a series of appeals, hoping to overturn the massive financial penalties levied against him. Central to his argument was the claim that his First Amendment rights had been violated, insisting that the judgments represented an attack on free speech and the right to express controversial opinions, no matter how unpopular. His legal team vigorously argued that the trials were fundamentally unfair, that the process was biased, and that the penalties imposed were not only excessive but also set a dangerous precedent for anyone who challenges mainstream narratives. Despite these arguments, state courts consistently upheld the verdicts, reaffirming the jury's findings and the legitimacy of the damages awarded to the families. With every lower court ruling going against him, Jones's final hope rested with the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. His attorneys submitted a detailed petition, urging the justices to review the case and warning that the outcome could have far-reaching consequences for free speech protections across the country. They argued passionately in public and in court filings that punishing Jones for his words, however offensive, would chill open debate and threaten the very foundation of the First Amendment. But on October 14, 2025, the Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal, issuing a brief order that left the lower court rulings intact and made the judgment against Jones final and unchallengeable. With that decision, Jones's long and contentious legal battle came to an end, and the enormous financial penalty became fully enforceable, signaling a clear message about the limits of protected speech. For the families of the Sandy Hook victims, the Supreme Court's action marked the conclusion of a painful, years-long struggle for justice and accountability, offering a measure of closure after enduring relentless harassment and misinformation. The precedent was set. Holding individuals accountable for deliberate, harmful lies is not a threat to free speech. It is a vital safeguard for truth, justice, and the protection of those most vulnerable to malicious falsehoods. The Alex Jones case reignited debate about the First Amendment. Free speech is a core American value, but it's not absolute. Defamation is not protected. Jones's claims weren't opinions. They were false statements that caused real harm. The legal standard was actual malice, knowing the statements were false or acting with reckless disregard for the truth. Evidence showed Jones pushed the lies for profit, even as he knew they were false. The courts ruled this was not protected speech, but malicious conduct. The case is a warning. In the digital age, lies can destroy lives, and there are consequences for weaponizing disinformation. The billion-dollar judgment sends a message. Responsibility matters as much as the right to speak. The Supreme Court's decision is a victory for the Sandy Hook families and for truth. Their perseverance shows the power of standing up for dignity and facts, even in the face of cruelty. The case is a stark reminder. Words have consequences, especially in the internet age. The legal system affirmed that malicious falsehoods will not be tolerated. But the fight against disinformation continues. We all have a role in demanding truth and empathy in public discourse. The Sandy Hook family's courage reminds us that no one should endure harassment for grieving, and that truth is not up for debate. Let's honor their struggle by committing to a society grounded in fact, compassion, and respect.